Hey guys, welcome to another video. In this tutorial, we're going to be learning how to make this retro Racerback Bralette. I'm making this in a size medium, but in the description box you find links to platforms you can get the written pattern that contains instructions to 7 different sizes from small to 4XL. As for tools, we're going to be needing a worsted weight yarn, 6 and 5 mm hooks, lock and stitch markers, and a tapestry needle. This is a finished front panel, so I wanted to show you guys a finished one before we begin making the bralette, so you can see, explain the design, and also to show you how you can lengthen your bralette. So this is the body of the bralette, then this is the part that covers the bust, then this is the part that covers the top of your breast, and then this is the strap. So I'm making this in a size medium. To begin, grab your yarn and make a slip knot, and then make a chain of 36. I've chained up 36. For these 36 chains, 1 is our 10-inch chain, and then 15 is for this part, which is the part you're going to increase the number if you want your bralette to be longer, and then 20 is for the part that covers your bust. So next up, we're going to flip, and then into the second chain from our hook we're going to go in with a yarn over slip stitch. So yarn over into the back bump, insert your hook, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then pull the loop through. Another one, yarn over into the next, insert your hook, yarn over, pull, loop, and then slip the rest of the way. So continue and work your way until you have 15 chains remaining on work, and then I'll meet you guys back. Gosh guys, I totally forgot to mention that after chaining with a 6 mm hook, we're going to switch over to this 5 mm hook for the actual crocheting. I didn't want to edit this part out because I wanted to show you guys that we designers can be a mess. I'm a mess. So after chaining with a 6 mm hook, we're going to switch over to the 5 mm hook, and then we're going to begin crocheting. So into the second chain from our hook, remember we're working into the back panel, into the back bump, sorry, yarn over and work a yarn over slip stitch, and then into the next, continue and then work your way down. I'll meet you guys back when we have 15 chains remaining unworked. So I have 15 chains remaining unworked. At this point you should have 20 stitches in yarn over slip stitches. Remember, this is for a size medium. The written pattern contains instructions to 7 different sizes from sizes small to 4XL. So for the next 15 chains we're going to be working slip stitches. So into the next stitch, work a slip stitch, then go ahead and attach a stitch marker to this stitch. I forgot mine, so I'm going to go ahead and pause this video and go get my stitch marker. Okay, I'm back. So this is my stitch marker, so I'm going to attach. Okay, so go ahead into the next stitch, work a slip stitch, okay guys, so remember, if you wanted your bralette to be longer, you should have more than 15 chains here to work in slip stitches only. So I am not good explaining things by talking, I'm better explaining it writing. So if you get the written pattern, you can read and then understand exactly how you can customize this to whatever length you want. So go ahead and work slip stitches only until the end of the row, and then I'll meet you guys back. Okay guys, so I'm at the end of row 1. At the end of row 1, if you're not customizing, you're following my instructions as it is for this video, you should have 35 stitches. 20 yarn over slip stitches and then 15 slip stitches. So for row 2, chain 1 and then 10. From here and out, we're going to be working into the back loops. So go ahead into the back loop of the first stitch, work a slip stitch. Okay, so continue, and then when we get to the stitch that has the stitch marker in, I'll meet you guys back. Let's hit the stitch that has the stitch marker, remove the stitch marker, and then work into the back loop, work a slip stitch, and then go back and attach the stitch marker. Insert your hook back into the loop, and then we're going to begin working yarn over slip stitches. So I'll continue, and then I'll meet you guys back at the end of the row. Okay, so I just worked the last stitch, but we're not done just yet. Next step is to switch over to the 6mm hook, and then we're going to go ahead and chain 16. Okay, so I've chained up 16. So we're going to attach a stitch marker to the 16th chain, and then we're going to go ahead and chain 39 more. So chain 39. Okay, so guys, I'm back. I didn't chain 39, I just chained 6. Since this is just a demonstration, I'm still going to frog this. So but go ahead and chain 39. So the first chain from a hook is our turning chain. So into, flip this, and then switch back to the 5mm hook, then work a slip stitch into this. We're working the strap, then into the next stitch, work a slip stitch to the next. We're going to continue until the stitch that has the stitch marker. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to remove the stitch marker, and then we're going to attach it to this last slip stitch, so which is going to be the 38th slip stitch for you guys. Okay, and then we're going to begin working yarn over slip stitches for the next 16 chains. Remember, we're going to be working to the back bump, to the next yarn over slip stitch, to the next yarn over. Okay, so I just worked into the last chain, which is the 16th chain. So at this point you should have 38 stitches for the strap, then 16 for this top bust part, and then we're going to continue working yarn over slip stitches down the entire row. Remember, when we get to this stitch that has a stitch marker in, we're going to begin working slip stitches only. So continue, and I'll meet you guys at the end of row. So I'm at the end of row 3. For row 4, we're going to chain 1, and then 10, and then we're going to work slip stitches until we've worked the stitch that has the stitch marker in. Then we're going to switch over to yarn over slip stitches, and then we're going to continue working yarn over slip stitches until we get to the stitch before the stitch that has the stitch marker in, which is work 15 slip stitches, then 20 plus 16, and then I'll meet you guys back. I just worked the stitch before the stitch that has the stitch marker. Next step, chain 1 for row 5, and then 10, then work your way back down. Remember, when we get to the stitch that has the stitch marker in, we're going to begin working slip stitches instead of yarn over slip stitches. Continue, and I'll meet you guys at the end of the row. I'm at the end of row 5. For row 6, we're going to chain 1 and then 10, and then we're going to work our way up. First, working slip stitches until we've worked the stitch that has a stitch marker in. Then we're going to begin working yarn over slip stitches, and we're going to continue until we have 4 stitches remaining, and then I'll meet you guys back. At the end of row 6, I have 4 stitches remaining unworked. Then for row 7, we're going to chain 1 and then turn. As you can see, we've begun working short rows. So for row 7, we're going to work our way down. Remember to begin working slip stitches when we hit the stitch that has the stitch marker, and then I'll meet you guys. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 7. For row 8 to 14, we're going to repeat row 6 and 7. Basically, a row of working up until we have 4 stitches remaining, and then another row of working our way back down. So go ahead and repeat rows 6 and 7 for rows 8 to 14, and then I'll meet you guys back. Okay, I'm currently at the end of row 13. For row 14, we're going to chain 1 and then turn, and then we're going to work our way up. When we get to this stitch, I'll meet you guys back for the next step. I want to say at this point you should have the same number of stitches you started with. Okay, remember when we started we chained 36. 1 chain, turning chain, then 15 for the slip stitches on the part, and then 20 for the yarn over slip stitches part. So at this point in row 14 you should have 15 and then 20. But if you decided to customize your bralette to be longer, you should have more number of stitches for the slip stitches on the part. Here I have 15, you could have maybe 20 or 25 or even more than that. So that's just something for you to know. Next step, we're going to work into the short rows. Okay, can you guys see? Cute. Next, we're going to yarn over slip stitch into this available stitch, 4 available stitches from the short row. So into the first one, work a yarn over slip stitch, and then into the next, the third, and then the fourth. Okay, so we are done with this row. To the next short row, yarn over slip stitch into the next 4 stitches. So into this, work a yarn over. Okay, second, third, and then the fourth. Okay, so go ahead and next. And then last. Okay, so it's the last short row. Okay, so we are done working to the short rows. So this is a strap. Remember, you should have 38 stitches. Here I have only 5, so remove this stitch marker, and then into the stitch we're going to work a slip stitch this time. Work a slip stitch, and then go ahead and reattach stitch marker. Okay, then next slip stitch. So go ahead and slip stitch down the entire thing. You guys should have 38 stitches, but I have just 5 for this demonstration, so go ahead and work your way down the entire strap. I forgot to mention this. After working into the short rows, we have, if you're doing exactly what I'm doing in this video, you have 15, then you have 20, and then you have 16. Remember when we chained 16? So you have 15 plus 20 plus 16, and then you can begin working slip stitches only for the strap. At the end of row 14, and I'm done working for the strap, I have just 5 stitches, but you should have 38 stitches. So for 15, chain 1, then 10, and then into the first stitch work a slip stitch. Continue until the stitch that has the stitch marker in for the strap, and then I'll meet you guys back. Okay, I just hit the stitch that has the stitch marker in. Remove the stitch marker and then work a slip stitch in the stitch. Remember, we're working to the back loop, and then reattach the stitch marker. Okay, and then we're going to begin working yarn over slip stitches. So into the next stitch, work a yarn over slip stitch. Next, yarn over slip stitch. So continue and then work your way down. Remember, when we get to this stitch, we're going to begin working slip stitches only. Then I'll meet you guys back. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 15. For row 16, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to 10, and we're going to work slip stitches only in the back loop until the stitch that has the stitch marker in, and then I'll meet you guys back. I just hit the stitch that has the stitch marker in, remove the stitch marker, and then work a slip stitch, into the stitch, then replace the stitch marker. And next step is we're going to work 20 yarn over slip stitches. When you get to the 20th stitch, I'll meet you guys back. So just work the 20th yarn over slip stitch. This is the end of row 16. So for 17, we're going to chain 1, and then 10, and then we're going to work our way back down. I'll meet you guys at the end of the row. Okay, so I'm at the end of row 17. For row 18, we're going to chain 1, and then 10, and then work our way up. When we get to this last stitch, I'll meet you guys back for the next step. I'm here, and this is still row 18. The stitch count is 15, or how many ever stitch you have for the slip stitch only part, and then 20 for the yarn over slip stitch part. And to complete the row, we're going to work off 4 stitches from this midpoint, which is actually row 15. So yarn over slip stitch into the next 4 available stitches from row 15. 1, 2, 3, 4. So if you look closely, you can see we're trying to mirror what we did here. Not really repeat, but mirror. Okay, for row 19, chain 1, and then turn and work our way down. Okay, I'm at the end of row 19. So we're going to repeat row 18 and row 19 for row 20 to 26. Basically a row of working until the last stitch, and then working on 4 stitches from row 15, and then chaining 1 and then working our way back down. So repeat row 18 and 19 for rows 20 to 26, and then I'll meet you guys back. I'm at the end of row 23. It's starting to look like something, isn't it? If you're enjoying this video so far, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Okay, for row 24, we're going to chain 1, and then turn, and then we're going to work our way up until we get to this stitch, and then I'll meet you guys back for the next step. Okay, this is row 26 and I'm at this point. So now we're going to work into our strap. Remove the stitch that has a stitch marker in, and then into this stitch work a slip stitch. Then go ahead and attach the stitch marker back. Okay. And then slip stitch. So go ahead and work for the entire strap. Remember, I have 5, but you should have 38.